Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host K Mo. Thanks so much for having us tonight and watching us live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. I have one of my good and dearest friends. I haven't talked to him in so long, but we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to be discussing tonight in a short while. Welcome back to the Brother Show. I'm your host, K Mo, life coach, relationship coach, and podcaster. Here at the Brother Show, we have conversation around men's health, around relationships between men and women, and relationships and awareness with ourselves. So tonight, I'm having one of my special guests on tonight. Haven't spoke to this gentleman in quite some time, and when we linked up, we just said we got to do this. So he is a father, he is a husband, he is an entrepreneur, an artist, just a good man. And I'm going to bring on Brother Joshua. How you doing, man?
Yay, happy man. Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the accolades. I share the same to you, brother. You're an impressive man.
So tell people just who you are real quick. I know it's up already, but just tell the people who you.
Yeah. So I would describe myself as similar to what you put there, man. I'm a man of God first, then a husband, then a father, and then I am really big on relationships with my friends and my family, and keeping the first things first. I like business, I like entrepreneurship, and I'm kicking off my artist career this year. So that's me in a nutshell. Oh, your audio.
My bad. Thanks a lot for being on tonight, man. I really wanted to. We had a side conversation when we kind of was catching up offline, and there were so many different things that was going through my mind because we hadn't caught up in a long time. However, there was a plethora of things I just wanted to come at you at and like really get your mindset, get your view on so many different things. And immediately we kind of started talking about relationships and telling your story, right? So tonight we'll be talking a little bit about, well, what does healthy relationships leading to marriage look like to you as from a male's view, right? But I want to also talk about first, before we jump into that, our relationship. So I would say as we met almost 20 years ago, I think I was teasing you and saying, like, I remember being in a space, and I used to not clown you as like trying to put you down, but just making jokes, because we always used to have jokes back and forth with each other. So all day, man. And so I remember us having a conversation and us joking and talking about how you were really like focused on being in a relationship. And most of us 20 years ago, we were kind of like in the space, just immature space, right? I think we had a level of maturity, but we weren't at the maturity level of what we needed to be as far as being committed to one woman.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that you just have to like really commit to and be in a mind space to do. So I remember our relationship, and not just with that, but just you being a good brother, being a good man, and always also being a man of God, and speaking highly of that. And that's one of the, from a spiritual standpoint, how we always like connected as well. But tell your story, man. Tell your story. I know your husband, but tell your story, how you met your wife, how that's been going. I know you all are still together, and you are a father as well. But tell the viewers a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I'll be brief. So met my wife in college. That's the same time I met you, around that time frame. The thing for us, and this answers the question around like what I think about healthy relationships. It started off. So what you said about me, being a one-woman man, I guess I would challenge that in the sense that, I wasn't always that way. As a matter of fact, most of my life I wasn't that, and I just got taught not to do that way. And so, but I found God, and in that relationship and finding God, it really opened my eyes to like grown man, what I would call grown man decisions and thoughts. And so, of course, I met then my friend who eventually became my wife, and I just had to pull the trigger. I had to wife her, right, and I was ready. I mean, like I knew, after all the previous relationships I had, even though I was young, I've had quite a few relationships, and so I knew what good looked like when I saw it. And I couldn't mess it up. Now, I also, if I'm being honest, I did have a moment where, we were together, my wife, but when we were dating, where, I made some poor decisions, and I wasn't really serious, and had the prospect of possibly losing her, and I had to like tighten up. So I don't know if you know that part of the story, but that's a true part of it. But no, I mean, ultimately, yeah, we met in college, and went to grad school after that, got married immediately. And I hate to say happily ever after, but, we had our struggles and ups and downs, but man, we still together. She's my best friend. I share dang everything with her.
So that kind of goes into, how you all met, and then like how we met, and then the success story. Like how did that success story come about, man? Like there's so many men out here where I'm sure you knew from that time, got wifed up, got unwifed up, and they're living a different life, man. So what was it for you that you felt like when you went through those hard times and those situations where you were able to kind of like push past that and be in more of a healthy space?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting. It is not 2 weeks that go by, and I've been married for 15 years. It's not 2 weeks that go by where we don't mention that, which is, man, we're so glad we started off as friends. And that friendship is something that you can lean on when the times get tough, because, the physicality of it, oh, she looked fine, he looked handsome. That stuff, I'm not saying I still look handsome, right? She still look fine, but that stuff has an expiration date. Your relationship has to be beyond that. It's got to be someone who you truly, truly admire, respect, and all that. And so, yeah, I think the friendship aspect is what we can lean on when the times got tough. And so conversely, looking at the guys and my friends who had divorces, these are their words. They said, hey, man, I met her under this different thing. We had physical attraction, but we really didn't have the chemistry from a friendship standpoint, and if they can go back, they say they wish they would have had something like that. So to me, that thing, I don't know. I'm not.
Do you feel like in those situations, because you all started off at a very innocent time in your life, and the friendship, you're able to go back to, when you say go back to the friendship to have real conversations about difficult times. Do you feel like those friends of yours, if they were able to go back, is it the fact that they didn't create a space for them to have those conversations? Because what I try to do, man, just to be honest with you, I try to have real conversations up front.
Yeah, dude.
There is no sugarcoating. There is no, I actually do the opposite of most of my friends, right? My friends go into it, and of course you're going to be physically or visually attracted to someone at the beginning, but once you kind of understand what that is based off of what you're saying, then you kind of go into real conversation, so that you are creating that space for being uncomfortable. So because it's going to come. Yeah, like you and I both know those conversations will happen and are going to come. So I actually do the opposite in relationship, so that we can understand, like, hey, we need to be able to talk, and talk about something real, and then have the fun, right? We have fun, and then when we do have those situations where things may happen, which they will, we kind of have established something where we can go back and have a conversation. And I think that's what most of my friends who I talk to and how they're dating, they just date based off of just physical and no real conversations. They don't get too deep, and then when those things happen, both people like sitting there like, how do we have this conversation?
Yeah. Who is this person next to me?
Right. Like, exactly.
Right. Like, I don't know. Right. So like you hit it right on the head. I think this is real talk. When we used to, we had college campus, there's plenty of women, there's plenty of men out there. She would be talking to different guys that she was interested in. I was talking to different girls I was interested in. This is before we even thought about getting together ourselves. and I would literally like hang out with her and tell her about the different girls I was talking about. That's how comfortable we were. It was truly platonic. It wasn't on some romantic stuff. And then just hanging out with her enough, I'm like, man, you dope. I'm like, man, you dope by yourself. And so like ultimately, yeah, it was the friendship. It was a connection on shared interests, goals, values, all that really made. And then the icing on the cake was the physical part. It was the secondary part, if you will. So yeah, I mean, I think that's it, man. Like you gotta start day one being real, because it's only a matter, you're going to deal with the realness at some point. You might as well get right to it. You know what I mean? And I like that. I like your approach.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. It's not popular, bro. It's not popular at all. I would say 90% of people do not like it. But again, I always say I'm not looking to date 90%. I'm not looking to be in a relationship with 90. I'm looking to be in a relationship with the minority instead of the majority. And so when I try to approach it that way, because I know, just like when you are in relationships for a long period of time, you're going to face difficult times. And what I've heard, even trying to get feedback from, when I listen to people in their past situations, to kind of see where they've come from, right? Because we all grow. I always ask them like, well, what was that like? And what happened? And a lot of them talk about a lot of fun. They can't really, and then it instantly stops. And I'm like, well, when you had the fun and you had an issue, why aren't you able to overcome that?
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? So I want to be able to educate people and understand, like, to feel comfortable in those spaces, but a lot of people aren't. So, just like I was asking you earlier. So what would you say is a secret when you're talking to your friends? Because that's one of the things we talked about offline. What are some of the secrets that maybe some people have asked you to starting a relationship during these hard times, right? I know it's been a long time, but I'm sure you still can see the world changing so much in relationships with men and women, and how they're going about. It's almost like we're saying the same things, but nobody's listening or able to like receive it. So therefore, we're fighting each other, and it's like a war that we don't really need to have, because you and I both remember relationships and families create strong communities, which create strong, the world that we live in, and that's where we come from. So like, what are some of the things that your boys kind of ask you and talk to you about that you would say you give advice on, or some of the things that you would say or if give advice on how to even start a relationship like that? I know you mentioned the friendship piece, but it's different stages and waves of dating, right? When you're young, you're so innocent where you can kind of be cool with somebody. When you got a full-time job and you working and you just trying to meet somebody, like, you're going there for a purpose, right? You're not going to just meet friends. You're going there for a purpose to see, hey, what is this person on? What is this dude on? What is this female on? So what would you say from your experience? We're talking to some of your friends and how they're either transitioning back out in the world, and maybe them asking you some questions.
Yeah, no. So I'll preface this by saying, look, I haven't been out there in a long time, but based on my conversations with my friends, and then just looking at the things that I think work for us, I'll just share that. And ultimately, it's the friendship component is definitely key. But in addition to the friendship component, what I would throw on there is that you almost have to find someone who, and this sounds corny, but they've got to accept and love you for who you are. And that is at the core essence, because who you are can change. You can get into a car accident, and what you look like, how you walk, everything can change overnight. And so having that foundation of true, genuine, like, love for who you are as an individual is absolutely critical. And then at different phases in your life. So like when you're younger, like when we started, sure, like we had plenty of time to just like fool around on college campus and had time to hang out. But when you're an adult and you're in different phases of your life, I do think it's a bit more of a challenge, because now you have things, that person likely has assets and things. And so there's a different conversation that needs to be had around, like, how do we bring our worlds together to walk in the same direction? And that goes to my third point, which is goals and an outlook on life. Really early on, you need to figure out where that person is as far as what they want to do in life, where they want to go. And I'm not talking about like physical achievements like promotions at jobs or how much money, but more so around what state of human being they want to be. So for instance, hey, I want to be a person that has a stable family and has a peaceful household and has, a healthy lifestyle. Those are things you got to get real clean and keen on, because again, that right there doesn't change it. Like, as an adult, people aren't going to change on that. If you hear a red flag there, it will come, and it's out of line. There's misalignment on your part, even on a spirituality standpoint. It's just a matter of time before that becomes a big friction point, And so getting those conversations up front, but obviously you got to do it in a way that's not creepy. Like, first minute of the first date, you're already talking about, all right, how many, ease into it, but listen out for that stuff. Here's an analogy I will share. Like, so I'm gonna put it on you real quick. When you want the best music, the best rap music, right? Think about the best artists out there, the best music out there. Are there a dime a dozen? Are they all over the place? Think about that. The best lyricists. But if you want music, you can just turn the TV on, turn on the radio, and you can get it. But if you want the good stuff, you got to do what? You got to search.
Right.
You want healthy eating and healthy food. Can you just go out your house right now, and the first few steps you're going to run into something that's healthy food? No. You'll find restaurants, but it ain't going to be the good stuff. It's going to be the low quality stuff. And so that's what I say when it comes to relationships. Why do people think that when you go out there, that most people you interact with is going to be the top of the best? No, you're going to have to really, really search and dig deep, just like you would any other thing in your life. When you want quality, you have to search and seek it out, and it's going to be a bigger investment of your time.
So a lot of the brothers I talk to, right, I'm not sure the guys you speak to, they talk about, and you see it in society nowadays, the image of women aren't as strong as they once were. I think in the sense of education wise, when we were growing up, I think that's soared, right? That's out of here. Success, those success stories. But as far as the relationship component of like that vision and view of them isn't as strong. I recently went to a museum, and I just saw the evolution of women, right? And how powerful they are, how powerful they came from, even though they may not have had anything. But it wasn't necessarily education that made them power. It was the uniqueness of them. Kind of how you said, everybody is looking for this unique thing that not necessarily can fit into your square box, but that can make that those core values are both at the same level, or the same viewpoint, or the same growth area, right? Because you don't necessarily have to have, from my opinion, they don't necessarily have to have it right now, but they have to have that same thing in them. So you have to have the same quality of that quilt. It's almost like, you come from good stock, from good people, like that's going to be in you anyway. So as long as you find that like-minded person, I think that you can grow that quilt to something bigger and better. But a lot of times I feel like that quilt that I'm describing, there's so many different quilts now.
And I agree with that. And then at the same time, I look at, and so let me give you some insight. Like, so my wife has a set of friends.
Okay.
And her best friends, none of them are married, right?
Okay.
So keep that in mind. My wife's the only one of the crew. This is the same crew that she met undergrad. We all rode together. I know. Whoa.
Okay.
They're like sisters to me, because they hooked us up in undergrad, and they'll still hang out, been to our house and everything. All right, check this out. All of those women I will put at a high quality level. I mean, high quality, the values and the things that I would say you probably have associated with, like coming from good stock. They have that. They got the spirituality. They got all that. Now, I mean, they're not perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? But my point is that you don't see them women. You won't see that on the mainstream. And so I guess my challenge to you is that what we promote is not always the reality, right? We're seeing the funnel of like what the media wants to see. So I'm not picking on Kim Kardashian, but that look, right? That vibe, that Cardi B vibe, if you will. Again, not knocking her specifically, but I'm saying the look. That's what's in vogue right now. So everybody wants to bubble that up to the media, but there's 100 women behind those women that don't look like that, and we gotta be looking in the right places. You know what I mean? They're not at the club. Most of them aren't, but they'll be at a brunch. They'll be at a grocery store and at a library. So I think they're out there, man. I just think you gotta. We got to separate media and what we see on the news versus like what the reality is behind the scenes.
So go back to what you said earlier about, healthy relationships. So how do you feel like you create like a healthy relationship and make time as a father?
Man, it's a one thing I learned is you never get it. You never ever get it like figured out. You never ever stop. And me and my friends who are husbands also, we laugh at this. It's a joke. We like, man, you up one moment, and then the next few weeks you could be down, and not down literally, but like you got to always be investing in a relationship, and that's the mindset I have. So constant investment. So we do some tactical things, like we do date nights every Friday. And it may, in our movie, in our theater room, we'll be watching a movie. We tell the kids, "This is my time." Right. So we make time for each other, because the moment you don't do that stuff, that's everybody I know who got a divorce. They say, they're like, man, it was just I missed a couple of date nights, then 3 date nights. Then all of a sudden she's resentful. I'm resentful. Right. And it just adds up. And so like the date nights is something we do. Dude, it just may sound crazy, but compliments. Like I compliment her every day. I tell her how beautiful she is as much as I can. I tell her how much I appreciate it. I still say please and thank you. She still says please and thank you to me. When we go places, she served my plate. You know, she is happy to be my wife. And I don't know if that. I don't know.
Now, was she that way when you met her?
Yes.
You know, was she still had that same type of quality when you met her, or is that something that was learned throughout the relationship?
Interesting enough, I think it was a combination of both. I think she did come with that because she saw her parents raised her in such a way that like the man is, you know, the head of the household or whatever you call it.
Right.
And so I think she has some of those views, but also I think she learned to just honor me. And then, you know, one thing I would say is that like respect is two-way. If I wasn't respecting her and I wasn't handling my business as a man, best believe I believe it would be a different dynamic, right? But I'm doing my best to handle my business, so she respects that, and I respect her equally. You know, I don't see her as like I'm higher than her or anything like that. No, I'm just a man, and she's a woman, and we play two different roles, but we complement one another.
How do you feel about the day and time that we live right now, when people talk about roles, and people get offended by that? Yeah,
it's getting real. I think people getting real petty, man. Like I saw something on the Rihanna. You seen the Rihanna cover with her husband, and so I was shocked to hear people had a problem with like, oh man, they got a man holding a baby, his baby. I'm like, people, like I wouldn't read into that. I mean, he's holding his child. I think people are taking this whole thing out of whack, where it's like, so look, I take the trash out more so because I'm there and I choose to do that. And I wash dishes and I cook. I do all that stuff. And then when I'm not in the room, she'll do all that stuff too. We got our strengths and our weaknesses and stuff like that. But when it comes down to like handling business, if I'm pumping gas, I'm gonna get out of the car and pump gas because I'm gonna do that. And that's just how I am. If I'm gonna drive most of the time because I want to drive most of the time. But I have no problem with her driving. And that's how it tends to work. But people tend to get a little it's a different mindset today, like where they're saying things like you're a man if you do dishes and all that, you're not a man, or if she makes more money than you, then you weaker as a man. And I disagree with all that, man. I think every relationship is different, and let people live their life, and whatever works for them, who cares to you? You know what I mean? Like, why would you care what another person works for their relationship? You know? I don't know.
Okay. What would you say, and how would you educate other young men who are trying to get into space of marriage or get into serious relationships, since again times have changed so much?
Yeah, I still have the belief that there are good quality women and good quality men out there. I do believe that, and so working off that assumption, what I would say is I'll tell you what I tell everybody is, if you want to get married, be patient and take your time. Do not get married ahead of whenever the right timing is. And so like, that's got to be a maturity level on your part as a man. You need to have, financially speaking, if you're going to live in this country or any developed nation, you're going to need a job or income to take care of yourself first, and also be able to take care of anybody else, a woman, and eventually if you have kids too, right? So you're going to have to be financially stable. And when I say stable, not a millionaire, not wealthy. I wasn't wealthy and a millionaire at that time when I got married, but you just need to have income. You need to be able to take care of yourself. And then the last thing I'll say is enjoy the season that you're in. If you're a single person, enjoy that season, because the moment you get married, that season's over, and you need to enjoy the marriage season. But what I see a lot of times are people mixing seasons up, where you'll get a young guy who feel like he needs to get married because his friends around him are getting married, but he still isn't gotten everything out of his system from a single standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that creeps into the marriage and it causes issues. And that works both ways. I've seen women the same way.
And I hear that a lot, you know, from my guys when they talk about relationships, you know, the roles, right? You know, as men, we kind of have to get that out of our systems and really be prepared. I always think you have to want to do it, but you also have to be prepared to be in that space too.
Oh yeah.
Kind of to what you said, the finance piece, be able to take care of yourself and someone else.
Yeah.
Be able to be an independent person. And I don't even like to use the word independent anymore, because I feel like it has such a negative view on it nowadays, instead of just saying, oh, I'm a human being, I'm a citizen, like I pay taxes. That's what that's who you are. Like that's what you do. That's what you have to do as a human being, you know.
America, right?
This is what you got to do. So I'm saying all that because I hear from the other side where the women now may be they don't know going into the relationship, they have to stop that single life too.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not like you can't still travel and be with your girls, but you and I both know I want you to stay right there for a second and really explain what you mean about like that season going into a relationship. Why is that stop? Because I hear everybody, the women I've talked to, and some of my friends will say, well, I can have it all. You know, I can have it all. I can still travel the world with my friends and this, that, and the third, and still be able to take care of a husband. And I always say, I don't think you can. I don't think that's possible. You know, like how you said, like it's something for your wife to come home or you be there. And I'm going to push you a little bit. I think that you drive because it's your responsibility. I think you drive because it makes you feel like a man. I feel like you drive, well, not man, but I mean a protector, right?
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you're protecting your wife and your family. So going back to like the whole situation, like with men, like you have to get certain things out of your system so that you can be prepared for this person that's coming into your life, so that you can do those things, so that you can. I personally, this is just my personal opinion, I hate to see a young man or a man at a gas station and his woman is pumping gas.
Yeah, me too.
So for you to say like, nah, that's a man's role, you know. And I hate to say it like that, but that's a responsibility. You know, she shouldn't have to get out of the car and pump gas if you're in the car with her, because at the end of the day, even if she's paying for it, now she's paying for it, great, but at least give her the respect. And I think that's called chivalry.
Chivalry. That's what I said earlier.
I think that's called being a gentleman.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. I mean, and that view changes depending on who it is. But to your point, I likewise, I'm not afraid of it. Like, I do have certain values that I hold as a man. And like, I'm not they like the lines seem to be so blurred about what a man does and a woman does. And so I'll be honest with you, I haven't really quite like thought through. I don't have a healthy set of like thoughts around that, but it doesn't feel right. I can tell you that. It doesn't feel right. Because as a man, it's like, look, we can pretend that we don't have roles and women don't have roles, but the truth of the matter is
we do.
If we were made to do the exact same thing, we would actually look, behave, and be the same thing. But I believe that God Almighty made us separate and different for a good reason.
Right.
And so we can embrace our differences. Hey, I mean, I tend to be a man. I tend to be able to go out and lift heavier things by nature of who, you know. So I'm going to go out there. If I'm around, I'm going to lift the heavy thing. I'm not going to make her do it. You know, that's just how I am. If I put pump gas, she can do it, but I'm here and I'm going to do it. Right. So I do believe in that. But it was something you said about like about seasons and just the girlfriends. Yeah. So like
women coming in seasons now, and they're thinking that I can still travel and do this. So I want you to go back to that and really like talk a little bit about, because that's confusing, right? I mean, I know for a man, we have to stop. There's certain things we just got to stop to do, man. Like we can't do this no more. I've heard women not try to sacrifice or give those things up.
Yeah, I'm a just say, I don't know this. To me, dude, there's certain things you gotta give up.
Mm-hmm.
Again, let's take this out of the man and woman context, and let me give you
Mm-hmm.
another context. When you become a parent, I would
Mm-hmm.
hope that there's certain things you stop doing. Right? I mean, if I were to just go and say, hey, I'm gonna get up, it's 5 p.m., my kids are hungry, but I feel like going to the store and hanging out at the bar for 3 hours. Man, if my kids would sit here and not be fed. So I'm willing to give up that piece of that freedom, if you will, but I'm okay with that because I'm in a new season. I'm in a parenting season. That's my deal. So I think anybody that says, "Oh, I can do everything," and still, nah, you got to give up some things. So like as a wife, there's
Do you
certain
feel
things.
like you learned that within the marriage, or was something you kind of already had in your head before you went into the marriage? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I learned along the way, but I
Right.
also had a good marriage counselor who helped
Mm-hmm.
me understand that. He told me, he
Right.
sat me down. Matter of fact, a week before I got married, so I didn't even have that mindset the whole time. It was 1 week
Right.
before. He's like, "Hey, just so you know, you got to be careful who your friends are because
Mm-hmm.
your wife needs to be okay with your friends." And I was like,
Mm.
"Whoa!" And it
Yeah.
hit me, but I understand now. I
Right.
understand now, and likewise for her. So yeah, it is certain.
Now,
I
did you
learned.
all have the same counselor or therapist, or did you all
We
go
went
separate?
to I went to, it was my pastor at the church at the
Okay.
time, and yeah, he gave us both counseling, but then he also has separate counseling for each of
Okay.
us individually. Yeah.
So again, man, I really want to talk. Like the last thing I want to cover is like leading into marriage and like those relationship goals. I know you talked about being able to take care of yourself,
Yeah.
having a mindset. I think that was huge because I believe that you definitely had to have a mindset. And I've talked to you offline, and I'm shared too on here. I wasn't ready, and I have no problem saying that because I think if I was trying to force something or be something that I wasn't at the time, I would have hurt somebody's heart, man. Like for real. I
Yeah.
would have hurt somebody's heart. And I knew I would have rather do that in a dating space than a marriage space. And it'd be, detrimental to someone because I knew I was still trying to figure out what type of man I wanted to be in a relationship. So, like I said, be prepared for that. So, what do you feel like the biggest thing that you learned with this healthy space, with this relationship, with having the right people around you? What's the most important thing you've learned to close us out?
Yeah. Let me say something about your comment too about timing, about where you were. I would just say this. I think personally, you should feel with the utmost respect about your decision to be a
Mhm,
man and say, I'm not ready. Because
mhm,
I see a lot of immature people, men especially, jump into things and then have regrets. And then the cascading downside of all the bad stuff will happen, broken relationships, but they're broken too. That man gets broken, right? So I think it
and
takes a
and let
lot
me
of,
let me stop you and tell you where I got that from. I was taught that at the age of 13. It was
wow.
a leadership program I was in, and my mom pushed me to be in it. And I'll tell this story to people. I've met them along the way, but it was a males group that they don't have a lot of those male groups like they did
No,
like they
no,
do now,
not at all.
like they did once then. But I will tell you, we got into that room and talked to those men who were married, right? And they
Mm,
said, "Ask us anything." They were kind of just standing there like, "Ask us anything. What do y'all really want to know?" And we asked them, "Were they married?" And they said, "Yes." And I remember either I asked it or one of my guys asked, "Hey, how did you know to marry her?" And they all said, "You just know.
mm,
You just know." And it was like, if you aren't ready to be married at the time, you have to make sure because the other part of the sex will maybe stay in the situation just a tad bit longer than you will.
right.
So you have to be man enough to be able to let her go
Yeah.
and love her enough, not be selfish, love her enough to let her go if you aren't ready or you don't see her as your wife. Because the first question was, how do you know she's the one? And I said this in my podcast before, bro. Like, no lie. And I'll say it again. The men that I know that have married now and have been married umpteen years, they all said after 6 to 8 months, it does not take no more than a year to 18 months to know if she's the one. It does
Exactly.
not take you 2-3 years to know if you're going to marry this woman.
No.
So if you aren't ready and you know that you aren't ready, you have to be man enough to be like, hey, I have to let this go. And it may hurt you, right? Because you're used to someone, you're used to this and the third. But I've always taken that to heart. Ever since the age of 14, bro. No lie.
Good for you,
I've
man.
always looked at relationships like that.
That's awesome. That's a great story too. So no, I mean that's respect to you. So I just want to say mad respect for you for like being a man. It takes a man to do that, right? But let me ask you a question. So I guess what I would say is it's a frame of mindset. It's a frame of mind. Whereas when you are moving through this life, one day we won't be here forever, right? We got finite time. Man, one of the most beautiful things, you can get through this life by yourself without ever getting married, and that's perfectly fine. I'm not knocking it. Look, that's a reality for a lot of people I know, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you do have the opportunity to that align with someone who can do life with you, man, brother, when I tell you that is golden. My wife has helped me through my darkest days. You know, I mean, dude, that she's seen things in me that I can't see in myself. She listened to Zoom calls one time, walked in the room and said to me, this is a real story. And she said, hey, when you talk, every time you talk to so-and-so, I notice you lower yourself down because you feel like that person's insecure. She just listened to me talking, right? That's the type of connections that you can get when you get a life partner like that, man, that she can see and help you see things that you can't even get through. And to me, man, that's golden. You know, that's golden. So it's beyond the sexuality, it's beyond the physicality. It's now we're talking about some real grown man level, like to your core soul type stuff. So I mean, you know, for me, that's what I look forward to. And that's what I tell people, like, get in that mindset. Get past the whole like, hey, you know, man, can I only have like make love to one more person for the rest of my life? I don't know if I can do that. That's a common thing my boys say about, oh man, you know, I don't know, man, I can't give up all that. I say, dude, when you get in the right mindset, you ain't even thinking about that. Like,
and I think what you said was even more important. You have to be around people who are talking like that.
Yeah.
You got to have a friend group who is in that same mindset. And I would even push it even more with guys that I've talked to. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
The only metal that can sharpen itself is iron. So if you're not around people who are talking marriage or around people who are pushing for marriage, then it's hard for you to stay in that singles mindset. You might be, even if you are around, have friends who are married, I think you're going to eventually not either want to be with those friend groups, right? Yeah. Or it's going to push you into a space of, hey, I want to still hang with my people, but I need to get myself together so that I can be able to be prepared for my person. Yeah. And if you're not doing that, or you're not in that mindset, because you hear these people talking, then I think you're in a bad state. And I have a lot of my some not friends, but associates that I would say who are still in that space, kind of what you mentioned too. But friend and core people who I talk to on that level, man, that's how we talk. Right. You know, and I think we need to have more people. The podcast I had the other day, a couple of days ago, we talked about that. We talked about how has love, has a relationship, do we feel like we can get this thing back? Do we think we can get this, not romance, but marriage back, the strength of marriage? Because there's some things I've tried to take out of my vocabulary, and I understand why you say it, because we grew up that way. I take out partner, and I use teammate. I take out I also take out partner and use marriage, right? Yeah. Because I think marriage has more strength than partner. I understand why you're saying it. Right. Yeah. But marriage has some responsibility behind it. To me,
legal. It's actually legal too, right?
It's legal, right?
Big deal.
But even when it wasn't legal, when you talk about where we came from our culture, that's all we had, Josh.
Yeah.
Marriage is all we had. We didn't call our spouses partners back in the day. When we came 400 years ago, this was my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only way we were able to make it through those hard times as a people was through family.
The family structure, man.
So in my mind, like how we're even talking right now, man, like you gotta have people, you have to have family to continue this legacy that we have, because if we don't have it, then who else is thinking like this? So we have to continue to have these conversations to kind of push this narrative back out there. And what does that look like? We have to all work on ourselves. So I heard you say we have to work on ourselves. I heard you talked about therapy or a counselor to figure out you first, so you can know who you're prepared. But a lot of people don't even understand they have to start with themselves first.
Nah,
I think that's the problem.
Yeah, and they had the false misconception that they can go in and like, oh, I'm gonna be made whole from this person. That is the biggest mistake you can ever do.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you're gonna be it's gonna be a mess. Yeah.
So man, I appreciate you, man. I love to have these conversations with brothers.
For having me on, brother.
Again, I want us to continue to have these conversations. I know we talked about possibly doing it once a month, and we're having a different topic based off of the month. And I know this month is geared around Valentine's Day, Black History Month, because I want to talk a little bit about the unity of family as well. And we kind of did that. But I want us to continue to do this once a month so that we can kind of hopefully push this thing out, and also bring your wife on too. Hopefully she can come on and tell the story that you all have, so we can have a balanced view of what this thing is called marriage, what this thing calls relationships, so we can continue to strengthen our communities, can strengthen our lives, and help the younger people, man, because we didn't get here just because of ourselves.
No, we had a legacy. And then, I mean, anytime, brother, any way I can help you out, man. She's got a great perspective on this. And so, and the kids too, man. We can talk about legacy and financial, whatever, man. Say the word.
So go ahead and tell the people where they can find you on social media, or you're doing your thing, man.
Yeah, you can find me on social media. I'm starting out my artist career this year, professional artist, doing hand drawings digitally. So Josh _LE_artist on Instagram and YouTube, and you can find me there.
Man, just like we do every single time, man. Thank you for tuning in to the Brother to Brother Show. We're going to continue to have these conversations to push the narrative, to push family, to push solid relationships. Until next time. Thank you, listeners and viewers, for coming on to the show. You can find us at tomorrowsmen.com, on Facebook at Tomorrow's Men, and on Instagram at Tomorrow's Men. Please click and subscribe to the button below. I'm your host, K-Mo. Until we meet again, know we love you, work with us, be with us, and know we're coming from the heart. Peace.